On July 9, 2025, Torre Pacheco woke to a day that would change everything. The sun rose over the quiet Spanish town, but beneath the calm, something was about to shatter the peace. Domingo Tomas Dominguez, a 68-year-old local, had just left the cemetery when he was suddenly attacked by 3 young men of Moroccan Muslim origin. The assault was totally unprovoked. It wasn't a robbery. His wallet was untouched. The attack was senseless and brutal. Blood on the pavement and sirens shocked the community, breaking the town's sense of safety. Images of Mr. Dominguez's injuries spread quickly online, sparking fear and outrage. The town's trust was shaken. Neighbors grew wary, and conversations turned to fear and uncertainty. Many blamed the authorities for failing to protect them, and the fact that the attackers were Moroccan Muslim outsiders deepened the sense of invasion and cultural tension. Feeling abandoned, residents quickly formed neighborhood watch groups and organized for their own safety. Vigils and protests erupted, and the town's quiet streets filled with demands for change. Torre Pacheco became a flashpoint, drawing national attention as the community united to reclaim their home. If you want to stay informed on stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to Smarto Brains for more in-depth coverage. Anger quickly moved from private talks to public action. By July 11th, just 2 days after the attack, Torre Pacheco's residents went into the streets. This was a movement from regular people, shopkeepers, farmers, parents and grandparents joined by fear and determination. Their message: they would not live in fear. The protests were not about causing trouble, but about protection, a demand for the right to walk their streets safely. Spanish flags waved, and the crowds grew, getting attention from across the country. The trouble in Torre Pacheco was felt across Spain, starting a bigger discussion about immigration, fitting in, and public safety. The people's sudden action gave a voice to worries felt in towns nationwide. The country's leaders could no longer ignore the conversation. Torre Pacheco had forced a moment of truth. As protests continued, the atmosphere in Torre Pacheco grew more tense with each passing night. What began as scattered demonstrations soon evolved into something more organized and determined. The protests transformed into organized citizen patrols, as neighbors banded together, determined to protect what they cherished most: their homes and families. Local men, frustrated by what they saw as not enough police presence, began patrolling their own streets. They felt abandoned by the authorities, and so they took matters into their own hands, walking the darkened roads in groups. They saw themselves not as people taking the law into their own hands, but as protectors, fathers, sons, and husbands defending their families. For many, it was a matter of honor and responsibility, a duty passed down through generations. Armed with sticks and whatever they could find, they aimed to stop more violence and get back their feeling of safety. Their patrols were both a warning and a reassurance to their neighbors. These patrols were a response to a perceived lack of authority. The empty police cars and slow response times only deepened their sense of isolation. Tensions grew as clashes with outsiders and some North African residents became unavoidable. The lines between neighbor and stranger blurred, and suspicion filled the air. Police, now present in larger numbers, struggled to keep the peace between divided groups. Their presence, though increased, often came too late to prevent confrontations. For the patrollers, their goal was clear: defend their way of life, their traditions, and the sense of security that once defined their town. The sight of citizens taking up patrols was a clear sign of government failure. It was a message that the people no longer felt protected by those in power. It showed a breakdown of trust between people and the government. Community meetings grew heated, with residents demanding answers and action. The men of Torre Pacheco weren't looking for conflict. They wanted peace, but felt forced to act. Many wrestled with the weight of their choices, longing for a return to normalcy. Their actions, controversial as they were, came from a deep love for their community. They hoped their efforts would inspire unity, not division. Ordinary men had become unwilling guardians, standing watch over a town they refused to abandon, determined to protect the place they called home. To understand Torre Pacheco's reaction, you have to hear their fears. Residents insisted this wasn't about unfair treatment based on race. It was about survival. Fear had crept into daily life. Older people avoided walks. Parents kept children indoors. The attack on Mr. Dominguez confirmed their worst worries about increasing violence. Frustration was aimed at both criminals and a government seen as ignoring their concerns. Years of warnings about the social impact of many people moving in had been ignored. Locals drew a line between immigrants who followed the law and those who refused to fit in. Their fight, they said, was with criminals and a government unable to tell the difference between honest criticism and unfair judgment. The protests were a desperate attempt to get back peace and order. The government's response was quick, and to locals, very disappointing. Prime Minister Sanchez spoke out against the violence, focusing on unfair treatment based on race rather than the attack that started the trouble. Protesters felt they were being wrongly described. Their fears were dismissed as hate. Police cracked down on the protests, arresting locals and using force to break up crowds. The government's response seemed aimed at stopping disagreement, not fixing the main problem. Opposition leader Santiago Abascal blamed government immigration policies, echoing the protesters' frustrations. The gap between Madrid and Torre Pacheco grew wider, with both sides not really listening to each other. The government saw unfair treatment based on race. The people saw a crisis of safety. Torre Pacheco has long been a town shaped by people moving in. For years, Spanish and Moroccan families lived side by side, their lives connected. The recent violence broke this fragile peace, causing distrust between communities. Moroccan residents who followed the law found themselves unfairly blamed for the actions of a few outsiders. Community leaders spoke out against the violence, asking for calm and unity. The Moroccan consulate expressed support and worked with authorities to ensure safety. Despite these efforts, trust was badly damaged. The riots showed deep cracks, two communities living separate lives, not a single society. The dream of living together peacefully turned into suspicion and fear. Fitting in had failed, and the social bonds were weakening. Torre Pacheco's promise of many cultures living together was now in trouble. Torre Pacheco's trouble reminded people of the riots in El Ejido in 2000, another farming town shaken by violence involving migrants. The memories of those days still linger, casting a long shadow over Spain's rural communities. For many, the images of burning barricades and angry crowds are impossible to forget, and they resurface every time new unrest breaks out. The pattern was familiar: a local economy that relied on migrant workers, a violent spark, and years of simmering anger. These towns depend on outsiders to keep their fields productive, but the social fabric is fragile, easily torn by fear and misunderstanding. Spain's immigration model, built on economic need, had failed to deal with social effects. While the fields flourished, communities struggled to adapt to rapid change, and the government offered little guidance on how to bridge the growing divide. Fitting in was left to chance, and when crime went up, tensions exploded. Without support or dialogue, suspicion and resentment grew on both sides, making it harder for newcomers and locals to trust each other. Many now fear Torre Pacheco is a warning for other towns facing similar pressures. The unrest has become a symbol of what can happen when problems are ignored, and people worry that their own communities could be next. Spaniards feel a new wave of immigration is different, less willing to fit in, more openly against local ways. This perception, whether true or not, deepens the divide and makes integration even more challenging. Official responses focus on speaking out against protests, not dealing with the real issues. Politicians offer statements, but few real solutions, leaving communities feeling abandoned and unheard. This refusal to deal with real concerns leaves a gap for extreme voices. As frustration grows, radical groups step in, promising answers and stoking division, making compromise seem impossible. Without honest discussion, the cycle of violence and protest will repeat. The lessons of the past risk being forgotten, as history threatens to repeat itself in ever more destructive ways. Spain is at a turning point, its social harmony at risk. The choices made now will shape the future, determining whether old wounds can heal or if new ones will be opened. Amidst the chaos, voices for peace struggled to be heard. The Bishop of Cartagena urged residents to reject violence and seek reconciliation. Leaders from the Moroccan community spoke out against the attack and called for unity. These appeals aimed to bridge differences, showing a shared desire for safety and fairness. But for many Spanish residents, words felt not enough. They wanted action and safety. The desire for peace was universal, but the way forward was strongly debated. Protesters believed only strength would bring back order, Others urged talking and self-control. The government tried to bring calm without dealing with the root causes. True peace, residents argued, must be built on fairness and shared safety. Torre Pacheco's challenge was to honor calls for calm while facing real fears. The violence has lessened, but the questions remain. Torre Pacheco forced Spain to face what kind of country it wants to be. Will it dismiss safety concerns as unfair treatment based on race, or have an honest discussion about immigration and fitting in? Residents want safety, order, and respect for their way of life. Their actions were a sign of deeper problems that can't be solved by force alone. The debate is not about kindness versus prejudice, but about finding a balance between humanity and safety. Torre Pacheco's story is a warning ignoring real-world effects risks, fueling extreme views. The peace of countless towns hangs in the balance. Like and subscribe to Smarter Brains for more engaging deep dives into breaking news, politics, sociology, economics, and social policy.